Good afternoon, everyone. How about we bring this week's reading into session? Hey, everyone. I hope that you all are having an amazing day so far. This week, we actually have a special guest who also has their own podcast. Feel free to introduce yourself and even give a little shout out to your podcast and social links.
Hey, everybody. My name is Ann Harrison, and I'm an author, professional writer, and I am working on becoming an editor. And I also wrote a podcast called Inspirational Journeys Stories That Matter. You can find me on Twitter at AnnWrites75. That's ANNWRITES 75. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Ann Writes Inspiration. And my YouTube channel, if you're searching for it, is Ann Writes Inspiration. But if you want to go by the link, it's youtube.com/user/ANNS music1 on YouTube. And then anchor.fm/inspirational-journeys is the links to my podcast.
Their links will be in the description so you can all check them out. But without further ado, let's get into the questions. First up, what kind of content do you share on your podcast?
Well, what I normally do is I allow authors like yourself to share their stories and showcase their work. And when I'm not having guests, I also when I'm not having guests on, I do solo episodes about my writing journey. I have done a few creative artists and entrepreneurs, but mostly I talk to authors.
Interesting. I find that type of track tends to always have a large and loyal fan base, so the chance of that succeeding is extremely high. Now, let's get into the second question. What are some of your favorite experiences when it comes to interviewing others?
Well, I like to. My podcast is a faith-based podcast. It's Christian-based, and I like to let the author or my guest lead the conversation. And sometimes we go down paths that are not expected, but I love to hear the story behind the creative process. And not only that, before I interview a guest, I like to read their books if at all possible, because it also invites me. It's a way for me to read things that I normally wouldn't read.
Yeah, I do find that sometimes I struggle when it comes to talking to new people, especially since I've had so many negative experiences in the past. Now for the third question. What would you say is frustrating or angering when it comes to working with others on a podcast?
Well, I'm going to be honest. Sometimes if I schedule a podcast or the guest doesn't show up, or they want to change things at the last minute, that can be frustrating. But most of the time people are, or another thing, when people don't get back to you, you send out the invitation, they start making contact with you, they say, oh, well, email me at this link. And then, especially those on LinkedIn, then you email them and you never hear from them again. That's the frustrating thing. I'm thinking, why reach out to me if you're not going to be a guest on the show?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can be quite a hassle, especially when you put so much time into the planning, or when someone has to make space on their schedule in order to record. So like, you could have had something else much more important going on, but you choose to make space in order to record with others.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what kind of advice would you give others who are thinking about starting a podcast or anything that could involve working with others?
First of all, plan your work. Okay. If you're going to start a podcast, whether you're talking to guests or you're doing solos, jot down some ideas of the type of topics you want to talk about, and reflect on whether this is a topic you know something about. Do you need to do some research? Do you know what kind of guests you want to have on your podcast? Make sure you have a good mic, whether it's the standard like Apple headphones that come with the iPods, or a headset. Make sure you have a good sound, and if you're doing video, make sure your video quality, if you can, if you're not visually impaired like myself, make sure your video quality is good. Mine may not be perfect, but that's because I am visually impaired, and I can't, video is not my strong point, but I do like to share it because it's another platform for me. It's another way I can reach the author, and I can reach other people, potential readers.
Mm. Luckily for me, since I record alone, I don't have to worry about practicing beforehand as much or work on finding people to interview. Though the first guest I've ever brought onto my podcast was a joy to work with. And she was really kind and understanding when I had to move our meeting to a week later since I got hit by a car and was stuck in
Oh,
the hospital on a recording day.
oh,
Mm-hmm. It wasn't too bad, just like a sprained wrist, but it did take many hours just to be get out of the hospital. And how about you share some of your own current projects that you're working on, like a novel of some sort?
well, I'm working on quite a few. I've got 2 children's books that I've done the first draft of. I started editing one, and I'm working on a mystery, and that's taking a little bit longer because sometimes I struggle. And when you get to the tips part of this, I'll share some things that I've learned, but sometimes I struggle with it. But I'm slowly rewriting my mystery novel. It's a faith-based supernatural thriller, and a Christian supernatural thriller. And and I'm also, like I said when I did my intro, and I'll say it again, I am learning how to become a developmental editor. I took a copy editing course, and I found that that was okay, but it was a little bit of a struggle for me. But I'm working with a friend of mine who's an author. And yes, her name is Allison Hendricks. I'll give her a shout out on here because she's an awesome author. But I'm working with her to help her develop her story. And then I've got a couple of potential clients in the future that I want to work with, and I'm going to start taking some editing courses.
That is honestly so amazing. I've had a few friends that asked me to read over their works for them, but they always ended up losing interest shortly after starting. So it's mainly just me who does it. And what sort of advice would you like to give others in terms of remaining motivated or continue writing?
Okay. First of all, you need to give yourself the grace to grow. Give your story the grace to change. And what you need to do is when you hit that brick wall, you need to tear down that, you need to stop, let that go, take a deep breath, listen to your heart. If you lead with the head, you're going to get yourself in trouble. If you lead with your heart, if you let your heart lead you, the story will find you, because that's where your characters and your story come from. And one more thing I want to add that I heard from a podcast that I got in an email this morning. We are not sharing a unique message. Right, as writers, we share the same message in a unique way. We are faucets, not the water. So you have to listen to your heart, listen to what the characters in the story are telling you. Then you'll be able to write freely. If you put your characters in the story in a box, you're going to feel like you lost the magic of the creative magic, because I felt that way this week. So hold on to that magic. Give yourself some time to do some soul searching. Open your heart and allow your story to come in, and then you'll be able to continue working from where you got blocked.
Yeah, I do personally agree with that. Back in ninth grade, I used to write every day, all day, and used to pump out like 2 long chapters a day. But going into 10th grade, I started to take on other projects like podcasting or making a magazine. Now in 11th grade, I have to like try to balance writing, working, podcasting, schooling, freelancing, and managing my anxiety and still have a social life. So I find that does tend to make me either burnt out or face a writer's block. So that is actually really helpful advice. And thank you for sharing. Also, how long have you been writing?
Off and on since 2010. So, almost 12 years now. It's hard to believe it's been that long. Yeah, almost. Yeah.
That is
Some
amazing.
some professional, some fiction. Sorry.
You must have gained a lot of experience over the years then.
Oh yeah, I've been through some rough patches in my life, and gained some experiences, and found that music and journaling are both therapeutic for me.
Mm. So how long have you been podcasting?
April 14th will be 3 years.
Hmm. Damn, that's actually longer than me. I've been podcasted for a little over a year. I had to take a few months break though, and I'm so grateful for all my listeners while I was gone, because even when I was gone, I was still gaining followers. And once I came back, I was welcomed with open arms. So, what made you want to start podcasting?
Okay, and I'm gonna have to go into my faith-based story for this one. I hope you don't mind it, because this was a whole new avenue for me. I've been wanting to start a podcast for quite a while, or start doing some audio or something quite a while. I've been listening to a few podcasts over the years to do some research to see how they conducted their interviews. I was interviewed on a podcast called Ask Win with host Win Charles, and she helps people launch their podcasts. And I kept thinking, well, maybe I ought to contact her, and then I ended up not doing it because I didn't feel the spirit move me. And then when I talked to my friend Jen Lowry from the Jen Lowry Writes podcast, and told her, and I had signed up for Anchor back then so that I could be on her podcast. And I said, I feel like the Lord's leading me to do podcast. And she said, well, maybe that's your next thing. And then I talked to another blind lady who has worked with Anchor and has her own podcast on Twitter, and she said that the Anchor was accessible, and I had played with it, and known that there were some things that weren't quite accessible, but I found the workarounds for it. So that's when I started writing down my plan. I did my first podcast. I did my first interview on Zoom after Jen and I tested out Zoom, um, to see if it would work to put the podcast up there. We did that, and then I started interviewing folks, and I just keep going because it's my way to meet people and to share what I know.
That is amazing. I record my episodes usually with Audacity, then turn it into a video using Clipchamp so I can upload it to YouTube. And final question. This one I'd say is the most important of all, so try not to get too overwhelmed. How was your day?
How was my day? It was great, because when I had my struggle on Monday, and I had been struggling for a while. I started editing my friend's work a couple weeks ago, and I've been struggling with my own writing. I felt like I was doubting my mystery. I was doubting my own the purpose. I didn't understand the purpose for the story I was writing. I did some soul searching, and today I had a breakthrough. So yeah, it's pretty good.
That sounds actually really uplifting. Well,
Yep.
as long as you find time to take a breather and try to avoid burnout, then I'm sure you'll be absolutely fine in the future too.
Yep.
And that will be for all of my questions. So do you have any for me?
So what kind of freelance work do you do?
Usually like creative writing, or recently I got hired by someone to like write a script for his YouTube videos, but after I finished writing the script, he just disappeared. So I never got paid for that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you work on Upwork or Elance or anything like that, they're very not they're spotty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
Upwork's the place where I got the job from.
yeah, I would go looking at other places like Indeed,
Mm.
or somewhere like or Pro Blogger, because Upwork, they hire. This is my experience when they were Odesk. They hire that people want to hire you to do high quality work for very little pay.
Mhm.
That was my experience. But yeah, I do some freelance too. I write for a company called Outlook Business Solutions, and I do blog articles on various topics in um, marketing, and then I do some topics for one of their blogs, and then I do some topics on about visual impairments for another.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Is there anything else?
not that I can think of.
All right. And that will be everything for today's episode. Check the description for the links to Anne's socials. Check out my novels Death Chill and Flame Rip on Amazon, link in description. Check out the Creative Writing Club Discord server in the description. Check out the Creative Writing Club Instagram at creativewriting_club. Check out my personal Instagram at dark_night_wolves. And let's bring this educationally inspirational meeting to an end.